Hi everybody, welcome to day 10, Career Exploration. Good to be with you here. This is just a pre-recorded lecture that we're going to cover today on decision making, and we have some great information to share and hope you enjoy this brief video, as well as the TED Talk that I linked in the announcement as well. And there will be a journal to submit for today, and I'll be sharing those details here at the end of this recording. I hope you enjoyed reading the second half of chapter 5 in Zookeeper's Secret. How do I find my calling when I'm stuck in this lousy job? That may not apply to a lot of you right now, but you may find yourself there sometime in the future. And you could look back at this chapter and some of the tips that it has and take what you've learned from this class and apply it to make a transition to find something that might be more suitable for you. So let's talk about career decision making, and let's do so in the context of our career exploration model. The way I want to present this to you today is just with a brief overview of everything, and then in the center we've added some new elements. So as you expand from your awareness toward knowing your identity more completely, and as you expand to know the world of work better, then you can take action that will connect your identity, your uniqueness, your gifts and talents to the options that you have in the world of work. So what are my talents and gifts? This area of passion. What options do I have? This area of possibilities. All of this represents the explore side of things, the expanding, the looking for more options, finding things you haven't thought of yet, learning about those. And you can take specific actions in 4 key areas: spiritual, social, intellectual, and physical. And we're going to expand on that today as well. As you begin to narrow in the diamond towards your career and calling, you might think of the questions: how will I serve? How will I use my talents and gifts to serve a need in the world? That's what the definition of calling is, according to the authors of Zookeeper. And where do I belong? What place do I belong in? That could be location, it could be employer, it could be family related. That idea of place is a rich area as well. So as you narrow down, you start to prepare for a career. And that preparation includes your education, it includes resume writing, LinkedIn profiles, all of those great tools that are available. And we encourage you to take advantage of what the university can offer you through the Career Center for help with that. This is another example of a career decision-making model here. And it starts with realizing that you need to make a choice. Understanding yourself and your options. Expanding and then narrowing your list of options. You can see the parallel between this and our diamond. Choosing an occupation, so making that choice and then implementing that choice. Then realizing you made a good choice. So this is a simple flow of looking at what you need to do and going forward with it, having confidence that you've done enough work to make a decision on a major, and then implementing that major. If that means changing your major, going through those steps necessary to do that. Okay, what I want to shift into at this point is an overview of that idea of spiritual, social, physical, and intellectual exploration of careers. To do that, I want to use some points from Alan Bergen. He was a psychology professor at BYU, and he had these 5 points of a theistic worldview. If you're viewing the world as a place where there is a God, these points are important to frame our discussion today. God exists. Number 2, human beings have both a spirit and physical body. If we understand the spiritual side of things, then we can give that more weight, more attention. Human beings can learn truth in a variety of ways. Of those ways, number 4, divine revelation is the fundamental source of all truth. So tapping back into that spiritual need of finding truth through revelation. And then number 5, God has revealed a plan to redeem his children through faith in Jesus Christ. The Lord even said, all things unto me are spiritual. So we start with our career exploration in a spiritual framework, and that is unique. You won't find that in a lot of career exploration classes out there at Stanford or these other universities. You're probably familiar somewhat with this children and youth program, where they have a balance between these 4 areas. And they're the areas identified in Luke 2, in which Jesus increased as he grew, in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. And I love taking that as a template, taking the Savior as our example in all things. We can grow just as he did, and we can do it intentionally. So I want to give you some tools on how to do that today. So 4 areas for career exploration: spiritual, social, physical, and intellectual. And I want to expand on that by using a talk from President Ezra Taft Benson that he gave at a BYU devotional. And here's part of what he said. This was in 1979, so it's a while ago, but it's still very applicable. Someone has said that happy is the man who has found his worship, his wife, and his work. Or in the case of with the women here, finding their husband and their work as well, and loves all 3. So your worship, your wife, and your work, and loving all 3. Do you realize that during your comparatively young years, you will probably be making 3 of the most momentous decisions of your life? You'll be deciding on the role of the church or worship in your life, selecting a wife or husband, and choosing your life's work. So there's a lot going on for all of you, and I wouldn't underestimate the weight of those decisions at times. So he gives some tips, particularly in the finding your work area. To find your proper niche and do well at it can bless you, yours, and your fellow men. That idea of service. If you need help finding your career, it is available. Then he gives 5 steps. Ponder and pray about it. Study closely your patriarchal blessing. Consider what you do well. Take some vocational and interest tests. Get acquainted with various professions to see what is available. So to break down these 5 steps in our 4 areas, consider what you do well. Ask people you know. Use your social connections to find out what it is that you're gifted at, what you do well. Spiritual, ponder and pray, he mentioned, and study your patriarchal blessing. These spiritual resources are very, very powerful and can give you some good direction. Physical, take some vocational and interest tests. Apply a scientific method like we've talked about before. Use something that gives you information. So a test is a physical item. There are other areas that we'll look at in this category later. And intellectual, expand your knowledge and understanding about various careers and professions out there. So here's an expanded list in the 4 categories. In the social area, I'm just going to leave this here and let you read through these. In the spiritual area, in the physical area, and intellectually. There are some great resources here. If you would just take a note or 2 of things that you're seeing here that either you haven't done or things that you have done and found great results and want to do more. Take a few notes of those things as you look at this slide. More in the physical area, since that last slide was a little bit light there. We've taken type focus, values in action. There's other assessments available out there. Job shadowing, going and watching what a job is like. Trying a job. Go and get a job and work in it for a while. Do an internship, which is a great hands-on experience. Volunteer at places you're interested in. All of these would be physical experiences where you go and you feel and you smell and you taste and you get a feel for what that work environment is like. And that's very valuable to do. more research. We talked about economic research recently, and using your intellect to figure out what is going to work, thinking about the financial aspects as well. I'm going to shift now to another way to apply this to barriers. There may be barriers that we have that limit our options, and we need to know what they are and find a way to either work around or use it to our benefit, so we're not jumping into something that we're not suited well for. In social, you might have a lack of connections, a limited network. You may not have references that are solid. Your family support may not be as good as it could be. Your communication and collaboration skills may be lacking. As you think about those, there's a way to change that. There's a way to look at that and say, okay, that is something I'm dealing with. How can I compensate, and how can I make do with that barrier? There will be an assignment in the journal to address what kind of barriers do you think you're dealing with. Spiritual, you may be unclear about your values, your motivation, your purpose. You may have some confusion, uncertainty, doubt, and fear. These are commonplace items in our world today. So those can be spiritually suffocating. Those can just take away from your trust in spiritual things. So finding a way to get through that as well, using your faith and your spirituality to push through. Physical, you may have medical conditions or physical restrictions with like lifting or other activity, mobility, transportation, location. So all of these are physical areas to consider. And intellectual, there may be different areas of skill that you know are not your strength, areas that could need improvement, or in the example of math, if you're pursuing a career that uses very little math, then you may not need to really boost your math that much. You need to know the basics so you can do managing your personal finances and such. But there's a lot of careers that require little math. There's other careers where your math skills are going to be core and they're going to be used daily and regularly. And if that's the case, you need those math skills. Same would apply to the rest of these. So I hope this has been insightful to consider how we can apply this social, spiritual, physical, and intellectual areas to our career exploration and to our decision making. Taking action, again, is the central idea. If I go back to the model, take action in those 4 areas. And as you do, you'll start to continue to make connections between your identity and the opportunities in the world of work. So I'll just end with this final slide from President Benson's talk. May you all follow your leader, Jesus Christ, and increase mentally, physically, spiritually, and socially. And I promise you, as you do so, you'll find great benefit in using these principles we've discussed today. Let me go over with you the journal, what's going to be in that journal for day 10. There's a notes, impressions, questions. I'd love to know what you learned from this pre-recorded lecture and the TED Talk. There's some ponder questions, activity 1 and 2. You can choose one or do both. There's 3 assignment sections, so informational interview appointment. Please remember that the next time we meet on day 11, which will be March, let me just double check on this for us here, which will be March 17th. On March 17th is when we'll be doing our informational interview presentations and small groups in the class. And so hopefully you have your appointment set and you're doing that interview. There's an assignment in the journal for day 10 on barriers